afternoon, and welcome to All Hands on Deck. This is a program that is dedicated to activating the masses in the community. Your regularly scheduled host, Pastor Ira Ackery, is out of state this week. I am filling in as co-host. My name is Doris Davenport. I am the host of the Doris Davenport Show, a weekly radio show heard on 1490 AM radio. I am so pleased today to bring to you someone who is what I call the man of the hour. It is none other than Mr. Mark Wallace.
Thank you.
Mr. Mark Wallace is the executive director of Citizens to Abolish the Red Light Cameras. Hello and welcome to All Hands on Deck.
Hello, Ms. Davenport, and thank you very much for inviting us.
You are so welcome. I am normally listening to you on the radio. I'm one of those clandestine radio listeners. So when I hear you in the evenings, giving people instructions over the last couple of years on what they can do to fight this red light camera business, I want to know, first of all, what in the world made you think that you could stand up against the behemoth of the city of Chicago against this red light camera business?
Well, first of all, I have a deep-seated faith in God, and I think my commitment to that faith and certainly my development over the years drives all of that.
Yes.
So that's the first and foremost thing. And I think that being involved in public policies, in public work over the past 30 years, and certainly coming to Chicago more than 32 years ago, during the time when Harold Washington was the mayor of the city of Chicago, that was a great inspiration to me and gave me the courage and encouragement, I should say, that we all could do something if we set our minds to do it, that the people are the government, and the people can make things happen if they just decided that they wanted to get involved, and they're consistent on the right side of the issues and continue to work. You can make things happen. So I've believed that for a long time. But my greatest inspiration was Harold Washington, believing that you could actually make things happen and you can penetrate government.
Yeah, Harold Washington has been such an inspiration to us all, and I have to tell you, I spend my mornings this month in a community garden with a group of high school students from Douglas High School, teaching them about edibles and planting to save the monarch butterfly. And a lot of these kids, we're exposing them to things for the first time, and many of them don't believe they have a voice. And I was sharing with them that I was going to be conducting this interview. I was telling them about your journey and just how courageous you've been to take this on and to stick to it. And what you've really done is to prove to so many of us that we haven't lost our voice. Even though it seems that the people of the city have been neutered in many respects, what you have done is to really prove not only that you must have faith, that you can accomplish something, but also that there is a process and you have to stick to it. It's step by step by step. You've been so patient. So what were some of the things that led up to this? I will never forget, first of all, the day that I saw the mayor of the city of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, stand at a press conference and say something like, "This is for the safety of the children. We want to make sure that these cameras around playgrounds and parking lots, that we're keeping the children safe." And I'll never forget, it's one of those times that I talked back to the television and I said, that is so not true, that if I've ever heard a political statement, that's one.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we kept hearing that not only were people being ticketed at record numbers, but then they delayed or they sped up rather, the yellow light. Yeah?
Yeah, there's been several problems. This whole program has been wrought with problems from the very first time that they started. First of all, a little bit of history about the red light camera program. First of all, the previous mayor, Mayor Richard Daley, went to the General Assembly and asked the General Assembly for the opportunity to look at red light cameras. And the General Assembly gave them permission to look at this in 2003. The city went so far as to implement it in 2003 without authorization from the General Assembly. So they were illegally operating this for 3 years. And then in 2006, an attorney by the name of Patrick Keating filed a lawsuit. And at that time, so the city went back to the General Assembly and then got the General Assembly to pass legislation that authorized them to operate the red light cameras, so constitutionally we believe that the cameras have been invalid or operating invalid for since 2003, since they didn't have the opportunity to do that. So any tickets that they had issued between that time and 2006 all should have been refunded because they didn't have constitutional authorization from the state of Illinois to operate the red light cameras. And then they moved the cameras forward. It was conceived in a corrupt scheme by three people: the vice president and CEO of Redflex, who wanted to get the contract for the red light cameras here in Chicago, the assistant deputy commissioner of the Department of Transportation, John Beals, who engaged in this corruption with Kathleen Finland.
Now, he's the one that went to jail, right?
Yeah, all three of them actually went to jail. And then he had a cohort by the name of Martin O'Malley, which they called the bag man. He was the person who took the money back and forth. So they came up with this corrupt scheme. He said to them, and this was all documented, that if you agree to pay me certain things, that I will make sure that you get the contract. He did that. He made sure that they got the contract. And then they made an agreement with him for every camera that you're able to get installed in the city of Chicago, we'll give you a $2,500
Oh, my goodness.
bonus, which is why the city of Chicago had the largest, and still has, the largest photo enforcement of red light cameras in the United States of America.
Wow, that's amazing.
So we ended up with 384 red light cameras. And then I started pressing the issue.
What year did the cameras go in?
The cameras went in 2003.
2003.
And then they added more cameras 2006, and then they added more cameras in 2009. And they ballooned to 384 cameras.
And this is important. We want to make sure that you really understand the background of this situation. So many of you will read this in the paper and you'll hear about the lawsuit. But what we've asked Mark Wallace to do of the Citizens to Abolish the Red Light Camera is to explain the history and the background so that everybody knows how we got to where we are.
Right. So we fast forward to 2009, and the cameras, now we're at 384 cameras. And then we go to 2011. I started doing some guest appearing on a Sunday morning show with attorney Ernesto Borges, giving some real estate tips. And after doing that for a while, then he asked me if I would come on regularly and co-host on the program. I did that for about a year and a half, and then my friends who own WVON, Melody Span Cooper and Pierre Cooper, asked me to do my own radio program. I said to them, I'm not sure that you want for me to do a radio show on your program.
You'd have to have one of those disclaimers.
Right. Which they do at the beginning of every show. So I started doing the program, and as I was doing the program, very shortly into doing the program, I started wondering, what is this going to be about, and what am I going to do with it? I got a call from a very young man who called and said he loved listening to WVON. He thought that the information that comes through the radio station is a great information. And he said, but the only thing is that you all don't do anything. You don't do anything. So I thought about that, and that stuck with me for a long period of time. And so I said that after I thought about this for a couple of days, I came back and I said, well, I have this platform, I can try and do some good with it.
Right.
What is the one issue that really bothers me? And so the one issue that really bothered me are the red light cameras. And I said, well,
how many cameras had you, how many tickets had you gotten at that point?
Probably close to $1,000, I'm sure. I'd gotten quite a bit of them. But I've always thought that the program itself was a unconstitutional program, and that it was an unfair program. And so I said, this is what I'll try and do. I went to management, spoke with management, They were very reluctant to me doing it because somebody else had tried to do it, or at least started to do it, and then they stopped doing it.
That's
I
always
made-
a problem, that
Right.
stick-to-itiveness.
Right, and so I made a commitment to them. I said, listen, one of the things with my personality is I'm like the dog with the bone. And I promise you that if I take this on, I will see it all the way through to the end, and it will bring no shame onto the company. So they thought about it, and they allowed for me to go forth with it. And I called for a meeting. I had no idea how we were going to do this,
Who would show up?
who would show up, or even how to organize a organization to fight back. I had no experience in that at all. And I just went based on my passion for wanting to impact public policy and for wanting to get justice in a system that we thought that was a corrupt system. So I called and I asked my pastor, I said, can we use the church to meet? And he said, absolutely.
And that's Logos Baptist.
That's Logos
yes.
Baptist Assembly. And my pastor is Donald Parson, and he absolutely opened the doors for us, and we've been meeting there every Friday night from 7 to 8:30 for 5 years.
That's amazing.
And so we called a meeting, and people just started to come, and when we originally started, I think we had as many as 300 participants that would come to the meetings because most people were outraged about this, but just didn't really have any platform to do anything about it. But like anything else, trying to unravel public policy is not one of those easy things. It takes time to do this.
That's
Once
right.
something is in place, it takes a long time and a lot of work to repeal it or to reverse it.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you, we're going to take a caller, but I'm going to ask you on the other side of the call to go into some of the things that it became really clear that even though the community was consistently pushing back on this law, people were complaining always, it was in the news all the while, all of these years, but the city seemed to double down. One after another, one after one, they would either speed up the yellow lights so that they could bring in more revenue. But then they began to have some erroneous actions that they forced people to do, filing paperwork unnecessarily. And I want you to go into some of that stuff too.
Sure.
But I believe we have a caller on the line. Welcome to All Hands on Deck. Is there a caller?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Great show as always. But, I was thinking, I'm Mexican-American, I fought for my country and all of that. But the thing is, it takes a city. Just like people say, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it's going to take a city pulled together to stop all the nonsense. You guys are a start to it, but you sure got to finish. I'm saying that only because for the last 20 years, at least, there's been coalitions starting here and there, and nothing's ever come
Sir,
up.
I'm going to have to ask
So
you
the thing
to
is-
ask the question if you have a question, because we are only a half an hour show, and we'd want to
Okay.
get as many people
Yeah,
in to
yeah,
ask
okay.
questions as possible.
Okay, then the question is, why don't you all get together with everybody else in this great city and get together and start something? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think the answer to your question right away is that this man that is sitting next to me has already done that. He got people together, he started this initiative, and he has succeeded from beginning to end. And that's what he's explaining to us. So caller, I hope you'll continue to listen. And he's explaining a process that may even inspire you in your own neighborhood to look around and see what's happening. Maybe if you understand this process, you'll feel that you have the power too to make a difference in your neighborhood. But Mr. Wallace, I'd really like to understand some of the things that the city did to dig in. What did people really go through? It wasn't enough that people just had to pay these tickets and then have the money double in a record period of time. But the city then began to do things to almost kind of, wag the tickets in the faces of the public.
Well, it wasn't so much that the city started to double down. It was that we were uncovering the problems with the system that we said was a system that was a failed system from the very beginning.
Yes.
Because the mayor had always purported that we have to have a system in place that the public can trust. And we had always stated that this is not a system that the public can trust because it's not a system that works. And that was uncovered with all of our demonstration, with all of our activism. It uncovered all of these problems with the system. And what happened is that when we started to demonstrate, and one of the things that we did was that we started to demonstrate every single weekend. We did that for 2 years straight.
Where did you demonstrate? At City Hall?
No, we would demonstrate, we would choose a location on the south, west, and north side of Chicago at a red light camera every Saturday from 11 o'clock until 2 p.m. Every Saturday for 2 years straight. That drew a lot of attention from the media. Chicago Tribune got involved. All of the television stations got involved. They started asking questions: who's this group of people, and why are they making so much noise about this? And then we started to realize that we were getting the attention of the media, and so other people started to join our organization who had press writing skills and that sort of thing. And so they started sending out press releases every time we would be demonstrating somewhere. And so the media would follow us all the time. And so we got a lot of attention, which drew the Chicago Tribune and other mediums to start really investigating because they had the resources to do that sort of thing. And so they started investigating us and uncovering problem after problem after problem with the system.
In fact, I recall a study that was conducted by the Tribune in 2012. This was a study that actually indicated when Rahm Emanuel continued to say that this was an ordinance put in place for the safety of the children and for safety of drivers. This study actually indicated that it did quite the opposite.
Right.
It caused more harm.
Right. All of the studies demonstrated that red light cameras or any type of photo enforcement cause more harm, and they don't produce the results that the municipalities purport that they do.
Hold that thought, please.
Sure.
We have a caller coming up. I'd like to take this call. Welcome to All Hands on Deck. This is Doris Davenport with Mark Wallace.
Hello, Doris and Mark. This is Reverend Ira Ackley. I want to just thank you
doing,
so
Reverend?
much for having such a phenomenal show today.
Thank you, Pastor Ackley. I'm so glad you called in. How's the weather down there in Florida?
The weather is phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
You're in my home state.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Miami, Florida.
Mark. They're very proud of your work, man.
Thank you so much, Pastor.
You know, Rahm is aware of this hard work you've done for the people, your laborious effort. So we'll make sure we have security guards watching your back.
Well, thank you, thank you very much. Thank you very much. The work. This is we've made some great progress, and we've had great support from people like yourself and other pastors around the city. And I think that what has been accomplished to this point is a great motivation and a great encouragement to the people. We have a lot of work in front of us. The job is not done yet, but this is a great step in that process.
And I want to encourage you and Doris, make sure you put the cables on him, because we need more people like him and Richard Boykin and these people who don't mind being on the front line speaking up for the voiceless. We need these kind of people in political office. I'm going to hang up and listen to your response, but God bless you. And thank you, Doris. I hope they let me come back next week.
All right, Pastor, be safe.
Okay, you take care.
All right, God bless.
And that is your normal host of All Hands on Deck, Pastor Ira Ackley. We're so glad he was able to call in. Now, let's just put some of the facts on the table in the 10 minutes that we have left. We want to still cover a lot of ground here. So the settlement, actually, had the city not settled, we're talking about a judgment that could have gone into effect of about over $200 million, correct?
Correct.
And what did the city actually settle for?
Well, what the city settled for was there was a $38.75 million judgment. So it'll be $26,750,000 in cash that will actually go back to the citizens.
And is the balance lawyer fees or projected lawyer
No,
fees?
the balance is, there's another $12 million in forgivable fines that the city had already sent violations out. So there was $12 million in those uncollected fines that will be forgiven, so that that money will not come to the city, and the city will not enforce those fines.
Okay, I see. And the judge is the one who will actually make the decision on what portion of that goes to the lawyers. I believe I heard you say
Right, the lawyers.
offline.
The legal fees that the lawyers are asking for are somewhere in the neighborhood of $11 million. That has to be approved or amended by the judge in the case. So the judge will determine what is a fair and equitable cost in terms of fees that will go to the attorneys.
Okay. And so now, what is the next step for this process? You said there's still lots of work to be done. So most people would think, well, you've won the lawsuit. Once the judge determines the settlement, people will get their monies. But what's next? Will these cameras ever come down? Is that the goal?
Well, I fundamentally believe that the goal is that the city will do the right thing and end this policy that is an egregious policy that attacks the most vulnerable people in our communities, largely on the south and west side of Chicago.
Yes.
And so our goal is to get the city to end this policy. And so we won't stop until that happens. So the fight, as I said, and the work continues on. This is just a great step in that direction that signifies that this is a system that cannot be fixed. So this is just another area of problems that we found within the system. And even in the City Council Finance meeting on yesterday, there were questions being raised that the Corporation Council could not answer related to this system.
Wow.
So we certainly have been able to demonstrate that this system is not a system that is a fair, just, and safe system in terms of public safety. I also don't believe that private interest should be profiting off of our public safety, because a lot of people, or a few people, again, who the city don't know outside of the two corporations that manage this system, are profiting from this. And this is not the way that government, in our view, should be functioning.
Indeed, it is definitely not the way that government should be functioning. And in fact, as we open up the newspapers even today, and we see the shell game that's being played with the money that taxpayers are paying every day, money that should be in TIF funds to go toward minority neighborhoods, blighted communities, is being used to renovate tourist attractions like Navy Pier. And that is downright criminal. So when you look at what you're doing, when we look at what you're doing with this red light camera abolishment action, we applaud you. And one of the things that's on the mind, one of the questions on the minds of many people in Chicago today is, will you run for mayor? And if not mayor, we need you in policy.
Well, I don't have not given it any consideration outside of when people ask the question for me to run for mayor. The only way that I would run for mayor is that it would have to be a huge public demand for me to do that. Because I believe that public office should be people who should serve in public office that the public really wants. But
I heard that once from a man named Mayor Harold Washington. People wanted him to run, and he said, if you want me to run, go out and get those signatures. So folks, this is Mark Wallace, coming to us today from the citizens to abolish the red light camera. And if you want him to run, get those signatures. Congratulations on your success.
Thank you very much.
And we'll be keeping tabs on you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today at All Hands on Deck. We'll see you next week at 4:30. And your my regular co-host, Pastor Ira Ackrey, will be back with us then. So once again, we thank you for joining us at All Hands on Deck, CAN TV, 4:30, every Tuesday afternoon. Good day.